My name is Robin. Welcome to English Grammar Now. Today, we're going to talk about the passive. The first question we should ask is, what is it? The passive is a specific way of focusing on the object of a sentence. The passive isn't one of the tenses. It's not talking about time, but it's a way of changing the sentence to focus on the object. In most English sentences, we start with the subject. We call these active sentences. It's the opposite of a passive sentence. An active sentence will start with the subject. For example, in this sentence, someone stole my bike. In green, we've highlighted the subject. It's someone. In most of the sentences we've already studied, we start with the subject, usually a pronoun or a name, like I, he, she, we, or they. But now we're going to change things and take a look at the passive. When we change a sentence from active into passive, we are focusing on the object. So an example sentence might be, my bike was stolen. You might be wondering, why do we need to do this? Well, there are three main reasons that we might choose to use the passive. First of all, sometimes the important thing is what happened, but it's not important who did it. For example, the earthquake was detected at 8:35 a.m. It's not really important who detected it. For a sentence like this, we are really trying to focus on what happened. We often use the passive to talk about scientific things or general information things. Number two, we often use the passive when we don't know who did it, or maybe we don't want to say who did it. For example, the house was built in 1974. In this sentence, maybe we don't know who the builder is, or maybe we just don't want to say right now. The third reason we might use the passive is so that we can start the sentence with the most important or the most logical information. Sometimes when we're connecting two sentences, we might start the second one with a passive, like this example. There were 3 textbooks for the class. One book was written by Dr. Miller. The first sentence there is active. The second sentence is passive. So how do we use the passive? We need to take a look at 2 important parts of grammar. First, we need to know what the object is. In a sentence, the object is the thing that is affected by the main verb. Then we need to add in the to be verb. Many tenses are possible for this verb, and we need to make sure we match it with whatever pronoun or whatever object comes before it. If it's plural, we need to use the plural form of to be, for example. We also need to remember the past participle. We studied past participles when we were talking about the present perfect tense. And we also need past participles to talk in the passive. So, for example, an active sentence like, I broke the vase. I is the subject. I did the breaking. The vase was the thing that was affected by my action. So I is the subject, and the vase is the object. We can turn this into a passive sentence by saying, the vase was broken. You can see that because this is a sentence talking about the past, we use the to be verb in the past tense, was. And because it's a singular thing, one vase, we can use was and not were. Broken is one of those irregular verbs. So, present tense, break. Past participle, broken. You can see that the object is now coming at the beginning of the sentence, rather than the subject being the first thing. Here's what a few sentences would look like in the passive. It begins with the object, then the to be verb, then the past participle, and then other information. So, for example, an appointment is required at the dentist. The road was repaired last week. The exams are being graded by the teacher. The package has been picked up already. You can see that the to be verb is changing into different tenses, but the past participle will always stay as it should be. In the passive, although the object is really what we're talking about, we can still add in the subject if we would like. In our other examples, we didn't put in any subject, which is fine. But if you want to add it, you need to use the word by at the end of the passive sentence. Here's some examples. The paintings were done by a friend of mine. The crash was caused by a cyclist. The repairs were completed by my father. We could shorten these sentences and not put in the subject if we wanted to. The paintings were done. The crash was caused. The repairs were completed. But it's also fine to add in the subject at the end. Here's something for you to try. These are 4 active sentences. So the subject is at the beginning. But we also have an object in each of these sentences. For number 1, for example, the object is the door. See if you can reorder these sentences so that the object comes at the beginning. Then you can use by to put the subject at the end. Give it a try. Here's what these sentences would look like changed into the passive. The door was painted by Philip. The broken chair was fixed by Mary. The light bulb was replaced by Justin. And the grass was cut by Kara. You can see that the has gone with the object to the beginning of each of these sentences. Also notice we have some regular verbs and one irregular verb. Painted, that's a regular verb with an ed ending. Fixed is the same. Replaced, also regular. And then cut is a bit irregular. Great job! Just like we can do in active sentences, we can also use the passive in a continuous or perfect tense. Take a look at these examples to see how that works. They are cleaning the car. This is active. They is the subject. Once we switch the order of those words, the subject and the object, it would sound like this. The car is being cleaned by them. You can see that we keep the to be verb and the ing ending that comes in the continuous tense. If we wanted to make this sentence into the past continuous, we could say, the car was being cleaned by them. The same thing happens for the perfect tenses. She hasn't invited me to the party. That's the active sentence. She is the subject. Me is the object. Now, the object me will change a little when it goes to the beginning of the sentence, because it's sort of becoming our subject now. We could say, I haven't been invited to the party. We could add by her at the end if we wanted. So you can see, haven't been invited. We keep the to have verb and then add the to be verb after. We could also put this in the past perfect if we wanted. I hadn't been invited to the party. Remember, there are some verbs in English that do not take an object. We call these intransitive verbs. A few examples would be to laugh, to sleep, to arrive, to cry. These verbs don't have objects that come after them. They don't need any objects. So it is impossible to make a passive sentence with one of these verbs because there is no object to put at the beginning of the sentence. So if we have a sentence like, the baby sleeps at 7 p.m., we can't make it into a passive sentence. There's no object to put at the beginning. Here's something for you to try. You can choose the present continuous or the present perfect to complete these passive sentences. See if you can figure out, if it is present continuous, it is happening at this time. If it is present perfect, it happened in the past, but it is important now. See if you can figure out how to fill in those blanks. Here's the answers to those blanks. We could say, the washing machine was broken, but it's okay now. It's being repaired. So we're using the perfect tense because it was broken in the past, but now it's not anymore. It's being repaired. The long form of that is, it has been repaired. For number 2, don't use the kitchen. The tiles are being replaced today. That process is happening now. Maybe they are right now replacing tiles. So the tiles are being replaced. For number 3, I visited my old school yesterday. The trees by the fence have been cut down since I was there last. Again, this is something that has already happened in the past, but we're noticing it now. So we'll use the perfect tense. Have been cut down. For number 4, I don't have any clean uniforms. All of them are being washed. We need to use the continuous tense here because, unfortunately, they are being washed now, which is why I don't have any clean ones. Are being washed. To give an example of the passive, we could talk about a news reporter. We might use the passive in a few sentences in a conversation, but someone like a news reporter will often use the passive because they're talking about things that are happening, and maybe the subject, who did it, isn't always important. So let's look at this example. See if you can find the passive in this news reporter's speech. Just this morning, a school in the city center was destroyed by a fire. No one was injured in the fire, but large parts of the school have been damaged. The cause of the fire is being investigated by the police, who think it may have been started by an electrical problem. Parents and teachers will be informed when plans for rebuilding are made. There are many examples of the passive in here. We can see was destroyed, was injured, have been damaged, is being investigated, have been started, will be informed, and are made. You can also see that there are some examples of using by to show the subject as well. For example, by the police, by an electrical problem. So, those are some ways that we might use the passive, and some ways that we might hear the passive, especially in a place like on the news. Thanks for studying with me, and I'll see you again next time. Goodbye!